All right, guys, Dropship Tyler here, and today I'm with one of my good friends, Anthony. Anthony is a professional poker player that his girlfriend also works for me as a returns. What would you call her? Returns specialist.
I guess you could say VA, but yeah.
I don't want to call her a VA, but yeah, she's an employee, so she's a VA.
Yeah, I guess to use the drop shipping lingo, VA is probably the right term.
Yeah. So she's been helping me out for what, 5 to 6 months, you'd say?
Yeah, I think it was like maybe August. August, I think, is when she started last year. So
yeah. So she's done a good job taking that off my plate. It's been a real help. But yeah, so now Anthony has been drop shipping as well, and he kind of is coming off of his first kind of real month doing it, you'd say?
Yeah, I'd say this is the first, when my girlfriend started helping you out, I started looking into it and talking to you a little bit more about it and stuff. And then, so I listed some items back then, but only 50 items or something. And I used a different method than I do now. So in the last month, I would say is when I really started putting real hours into it. So yeah, I'd say.
Yeah, and you were doing kind of more of the David Vu method, right? Like something that I was kind of teaching. Is that?
When I started doing it with you, I wasn't really ready to dive right in, so I kind of just wanted to get my feet wet a little bit. And I also had it in my eBay account had a really bad limits. I started out with only I think 5 or 10 items I could list. So I realized I wasn't going to be able to drop ship and make any real money for a while until I built that account up. So I just watched the David Vu series on Udemy, and then I just kind of used this method just to kind of figure out how it worked and get a little bit of an idea of maybe some of the basics. But I never really I probably never spent more than a couple hours in a month or something during that time. I was just doing it more to figure it out. So
yeah, I had kind of test the waters a little bit.
Yeah, test the waters, and I think dropshipping is this big idea, and you'll read stuff on if you Google dropshipping, you'll read a lot of stuff dropshipping is a scam and stuff. So I was still a little skeptical to start out. I wasn't sure exactly. I saw some of your numbers, but there's a difference between seeing what everyone else is doing and doing it yourself. So I got a little bit of experience, but probably from then in August maybe until December, I probably only sold I probably only had 20 total sales or something like that. So yeah. I wasn't not doing any high volume or anything like that, but at least I was figuring out the process, and I realized how to list an item, sell an item, ship the item, stuff like that, which is really, really basic dropshipping stuff. But I had a little bit of experience.
Yeah. I mean, there's a little bit of a learning curve, but I mean, you picked up real quickly, and I guess now that you're so actually, let's talk about a little bit about what you were doing, I guess,
sure,
before dropshipping. Where do you live now? Give me your past 5 or 6 years of making money online, because I know you do. So
sure. So I pretty much after I graduated college, and I was making a little bit of money online playing poker at the time. So I was 6 years ago, I was a lot more naive than I am now, but looking back on it, it was a good decision. But I decided to really dive right into trying to become an online poker player. So I was already making some money doing it, but I had classes, and I took classes really seriously in college. So that was definitely my top priority. So once I graduated college, instead of getting a job where I could have made decent money, I decided to become a poker player. And I didn't make great money in the first year doing it, but I learned. And eventually at the time, poker became like a gray market in the U.S., and a lot of the sites got shut down. So it kind of forced everyone who was an online poker player in the U.S. to make a decision if they wanted to keep playing poker. You had to leave the country basically. So at that time, I decided it was time to go to Costa Rica, where I had some friends that were living there. I had some other friends that we kind of came up together playing poker, and so we all decided to go there. So at that time, I probably was a little bit naive to make that move at the time, because I don't know if I was making so much money to be I can reliably go to Costa Rica and be a professional poker player and have no. Poker's always a gamble, but when you have 3 years of poker experience and you've always paid the bills, you kind of can say to yourself, okay, I know I can do this. Mm-hmm. When I moved to Costa Rica, I didn't know I could do it, but I thought I could do it. Yeah. And so
I mean, it's a gamble. It's a gamble. You're a gambler, so you decided to take the gamble. I mean, it paid off.
I think anyone who's doing anything on their own and not working for a company, you're gambling always. You know, like any business, any personal business you own, things can go wrong. You can get lawsuits. Things can always happen. So when you're not like collecting company check every month, you're always gambling. And I think poker just takes that to the extreme because, of course, like I think most people that are drop shipping, even, you know, you can have an idea of how much money you're going to make every month. But that's the thing about poker for people that might not really be familiar with that kind of lifestyle or that kind of job, I guess you could say, is that you can never guarantee how much money you're going to make. So I've gone through times where I've gone 3 or 4 months without making money or actually losing money. And that's just kind of part of the lifestyle. And
I mean, yeah, that, like, it's funny you say that, like 3 or 4 months without making money, but I mean, there's months where you make more money than, you know, whatever.
Yeah, more money than you can really imagine.
Yeah, exactly.
But it goes both ways. Like, I mean, people might ask me how much money what's the most amount of money I made in a day, and the amount of money I tell them will, like, be mind-blowing to them, but at the same time, I try to say to them, like, but that, getting to that day where you make all that money, you've had so many days where you've lost a lot of money that would be maybe not mind-blowing, but still, like, what the hell, you worked 10 hours and you lost like $1,000 or something or more. Yeah. And that can be pretty mind-blowing to people too. So it's just a different lifestyle.
Just the fact there's no guarantee, like, day to day, like you said, it's all just a gamble. And that's one thing in, like, the beginning, I really like a similarity that I see between poker and dropshipping in the beginning. When you don't have a lot of items, there's like a ton of variance, right? Like, you might get a sale one day, you won't get a sale the next day. Just randomly, you'll get 10 sales in one day and you know, not get one the next day. So at the very beginning of dropshipping, I kind of, like, poker for me, because I obviously, like, I play poker as well. That's how we know each other, through poker. But for me, it was like, okay, I understand variance. Like, I've played poker. I know how poker works. Like you were talking about, I'm gonna keep sticking with it, and I know as I get more items, the variance will go down. Just as you keep getting, you know, your best sellers on a daily basis or whatever. I think,
well, first of all, like, I think maybe a lot of people watching this don't really have that background of variance. So it's something that maybe we have in common that some of the viewers might not. I'm sorry, but you're definitely right that poker is a good, like, I guess, foundation to have going into dropshipping, in the fact that, like if I wasn't a poker player, maybe I would be like, maybe I'd be like frustrated that an item that was selling a lot before stopped selling or something, or maybe that I had like one day that was huge, like a lot of sales, and the next day did it, and there's no rhyme or reason to it sometimes, or in just some of the ways that, like, eBay works. And, you know, I think there's a lot of mystery behind, like, eBay algorithms, and we're all kind of guessing and speculating on what it is. But a lot of that, I think having a poker background definitely gives you a good, I guess, like it's already kind of built into my thinking, and that I don't really question the results. I just only think about, like, the method. So for me, it's like the processes and, like, my thought process, the decisions I make, and the work I put into it. I think if I continue to do those things well, the results are going to come, and I try not to stress them on a day-to-day basis. And I think that might be difficult for other people that are starting out. And I especially think it's difficult if you are starting out and you want to give yourself, like, a goal, like a profit goal. Like, if you say, I want to make $1,000 my first month, or I want to have $1,000 profit month my first 3 months. For me, I think that you could make that goal and you maybe could achieve it, but I don't think that way. I just think to myself, like, I want to work X amount of hours this month, or I want to list X amount of items this month, or something like that. And those are the ways I think. And I think that gives you a big advantage when you go into something like this, where you can't predict your future. You can just work as hard as you can. And then maybe once you have data and you've done this for a while, then maybe you can start making some predictions with I guess, like, relative, you're be pretty close to what you're going to make. But I think at the beginning that would be a stupid or a naive way to think about dropshipping.
Yeah, and I think now with how many items I have, it's kind of easy for me to say, okay, I have 50,000 items. I'm making, you know, $12,000 net profit a month. If I get 100,000 items over time, I should be, you know, at $25,000 a month net profit. So, like, once you get, it's that variance we were just talking about. Yep. But yeah, you're right. At the beginning, you have no idea really how things are going to go. It's kind of like the video. I did another video where I talked about kind of the things you can control. And really, it's all about, like you just exactly said, it's about the things that you can control, making sure that you're doing those processes. as optimally as possible, and just letting everything kind of take its course. I know that you don't want to be too like lax about it. You want to learn as much as you can, but there's only so many things that you can do, and then it's all just about mindset and like
Yes.
being patient. Just like, I mean, it's funny because everything can relate back to poker in the world pretty much, or in business. It's about patience and just patience and growing like your bankroll, right? It's about patience and growing your store in eBay dropshipping. So it is interesting, like the control aspect. And I think that right there is like the one thing that sets apart the people that make it and the people that don't make it. They have like one little struggle, you know, and they fall off. Or
Yeah, I think
it's like they think it's a get rich quick scheme, which obviously, you know, it's not. It's a business that you have to build. It's just you can build it way quicker than most businesses, but still not a get rich quick scheme.
I think part of the thing with dropshipping is it's like extremely appealing to people. Like anyone who like desires like, I guess, like freedom from having a boss or like wanting to travel, and also the fact that like you can pretty much do this all from home with relatively small investment. Like I think we can talk about that later, maybe about how much like what a good amount of money to start this with. But just the fact that like all those factors are pretty ideal for people right now, especially the way like most people think. I guess like I guess like for like millennials or people of our generation, we're very independent, and like maybe I'm making generalizations or stereotypes, but I think like a lot of people of our age like kind of want to have some freedom. We grew up like with people telling us like we can do anything we want to do. And I think a lot of people, like I personally don't have this experience because I didn't have like a serious job, but I think a lot of people get into a serious job and then realize like that they're just kind of like working for the man, and they want to have their own freedom. So I think dropshipping draws that, like it has a big audience of people that are interested in that. And I think in some ways that can be a pitfall because, you know, it still is work. Like this isn't just like you get on the computer and you do a few things and you start making money. Like this is actually owning like a serious business. Like you're going to have a business that probably in a year, if you do everything right, is going to have like $500,000 to $1 million in revenue. Yeah. So I think most people like, you need to make sure that you're doing all the like setting up the foundation correctly to know that like if you are projecting that in a year you're going to have $500,000 in revenue, there's a lot of steps you need to take to be prepared for that. Mm-hmm. Because it's not just so easy as it's not get rich quick. You can get rich fairly quickly, but at the same time it doesn't just happen like that. Like you need to be making sure you're doing all the right methodical things so that when you get to that point where you can actually get rich, that you're not going to have problems or lawsuits or issues that come up. So I think the idea of get rich quick is a good one, and it does kind of relate, but at the same time, it's not, this industry is not, you're probably not going to get rich quick. You're going to get rich because you worked hard.
Yeah.
So
yeah, exactly. It's about setting everything up. Like once you know what you're doing, it's just all about time and scaling. So yeah, I mean, it's definitely possible to get to whatever level you want to get to. It's just, are you willing to wait it out and keep doing the things on a daily basis and forming those good habits that are going to get you there. But like you mentioned, the serious business aspect, I can relate to that because, you know, a year ago, I didn't even think about tax repercussions or anything like that, or, you know, bookkeeping even. I think I started bookkeeping this time, like being serious about it, this time last year when I was already like 3 months into it. And now I woke up this morning and like I saw my bank account, and I was like, whoa, what happened? And it's because they cashed the check. Like I sent off my taxes last week. Oh, yeah. And they cashed the check, the federal. And I was just like, yeah, wow, okay. It's a real business. Like, yeah. I mean, when I got people don't realize that aspect. Like they need to be organized and they need to treat it like a business. Just because it's online, it's still real, you know? But
yeah, I think like you can kind of think like sometimes it's like a video game that you're just making all these sales, making all this money, or mm-hmm. making money, or, you know, and it's just like, I mean, for me, it's pretty crazy. Like this is my first month really doing it, and I'm going to have 17K in sales, and that's a lot of money. Like, I mean, that's a serious amount of money in 1 month, yeah. Especially going from zero or like, I think last month maybe I had like 3K in sales or something because I started like halfway through February, but that's a serious amount of money, and that it can happen really fast, especially if you're doing things the right way. Yeah. But just to follow up on something you said is how, like 3 months into it a year ago, you weren't even thinking about bookkeeping. Well, one of the big advantages I've had is that like you've kind of been like a coach or a mentor to me since we've started this. So like instead of me being 3 months into this and realizing I need to do bookkeeping, like I've been watching you, like your success, and talking to you on almost a daily basis for the last 12 months maybe. Yeah. And I've realized myself like that I need to start doing bookkeeping the day I started, and a lot of these things, like a lot of the problems that you've had, or the, I guess, like issues you've had to solve, or the processes you've had to install, I've seen you do those, and I've seen the problem come up, and then I've seen you scramble for a solution, and it's helped me to be able to build in those solutions earlier instead of having to like react so much. So it's one thing I would say to like anyone who's fairly new to dropshipping is, if you have an opportunity to have a mentor or a coach, even if it costs you money, I think it's almost essential. You can definitely do it without that, but it's going to like speed up your time of success by like an extremely large degree. And I think like it depends on the amount of money. Obviously, if you don't have a lot of money to invest, then maybe it's something that isn't reasonable for you. But in my opinion, like if you were to pay someone for coaching, your return on investment on that is probably going to be like more than 10 times whatever the person charges.
Oh yeah, for sure. So, especially over the long run, it's probably 1,000 times whatever the person charges over the long run. Well, one of the things is like at the beginning, I'm making an assumption, but at the beginning, most people that are starting dropshipping probably don't have as deep of pockets as people that are a year in. But like for me personally, like I think in 4 or 5, 6 months, when dropshipping becomes my primary income source, I'm going to be paying people that know dropshipping, know certain specialization or specialties of dropshipping. I'm going to be paying them money, I'm pretty sure, to get coaching in certain areas that I think that maybe you might not have the biggest expertise at, or for me to grow into it being a better dropshipper, because it's something that I experienced in the past in poker, where there were a lot of poker players that were maybe not as smart as me, maybe not as good at poker than me, but they got coaching, and they paid a lot of money sometimes, at times like $200 an hour, or even $1,000 an hour. But those people went from being like at my level to being like some of the best players in the world that were making like hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, just because really the biggest catalyst for that growth was paying for coaching. So I would assume, and just from my experience with working with you, I would think that in dropshipping it's pretty similar to the amount of time, money, to the time you can save and money you can make. The return on investment for coaching is probably very high. Yeah, and it's funny too though, because dropshipping is pitched as this no startup cost, business or whatever. But yeah, the people that are willing to put money in, I guess, up front, like you said, and do the coaching and all that, they're definitely going to see the exponential growth rather than more of like the slow, steady growth.
I think it's a way that you can really speed up your growth. Second of all, I think it's a way that you can avoid like the beginner pitfalls that I think a lot of people, I think probably like 99% of people that try dropshipping run into some kind of problem in the first like 60 days, and then they just decide like this frustration's not worth my time, or like I don't really know how to solve this problem. And if you have someone who's been there, especially someone who might be coaching more than one person at the same time, that person's probably seen all those problems and can reassure you like, hey man, look, yeah, it sucks. It's going to take you a while to solve this problem, but the solution is there. Just work and you'll find the solution, or I know the solution. Here's the solution, and you can solve this problem that otherwise would have been like you thinking about it for 4 days while you're falling asleep, not realizing a solution, being stressed out about it all the time, and eventually getting frustrated and quitting.
Yeah, so it's so true. I mean, like for me, just an example of that, just to go off of what you just said, I remember I was freaking out when I had or not even when I had my first return, I was freaking out like, what am I going to do when I get a return? Yeah. And then it's like, okay, I just upload a label and it's over with, But a beginner, they do worry about those things, like the little things that I don't even like think of on a daily, even item not received cases, like things like that, or eBay closing a case not in my favor. It's going to happen every once in a while. Just things slip through when you're doing a ton of volume. I don't lose sleep over it. I just delete the message now. And I do my best to control as much as I can, but I can't control everything, and things are going to happen. And like you said, a noob might quit, and a dropshipping pro is like, okay, that's day-to-day operations right there. So
yes, I think like even if you have even if you're not paying for it, you just have someone that like just gives you positive feedback, or gives you advice and just says like, hey man, like I guess like to explain like a little bit deeper is like in dropshipping, they're pretty much the major thing of the business is just like solving problems that come up all the time. Like there's little problems that happen all the time, and the most like frustrating and I guess like difficult part is just being able to solve the problems when they come up. And part of the thing is like when you're first starting out and a problem comes up, it's really like your thought process kind of has to change to like what's the solution instead of like, I guess like maybe my first reaction when I had my first problem that I didn't know the answer to is like a kind of a sense of like panic, like what, oh my God, what have I got myself into? And then if you have someone that like some kind of positive enforcement or positive reinforcement from someone who's done this before that tells you, hey man, these problems happen. I've had these problems. I got through them. You're going to be okay. Yeah. That can be huge just to like get you out of that panic stage of like thinking like, how am I going to deal with this problem? And then I guess the second thing is that when you this industry kind of has like a snowball effect, or I guess like getting started, where as you start doing this more and more and like solving problems more and more, the next problem seems a little bit less difficult. Like even if it is 5 times more difficult than a problem you had in the first month or in the first week or something, then a problem you have 2 months later or 4 weeks later, I think it just becomes like something that you're like, I can do this, I can solve this problem, because you have confidence that you've solved all the problems that have come to you up into that point. And so you're just like, okay, I know how to find solutions to problems, and you use the resources you have available to you to figure out how to tackle some of these issues. So I think going from that snowball metaphor too is like, that's the other thing about dropshipping is like, I think if you're doing it the right way, I've seen other people with this type of success, and I've kind of seen it with my limited time of doing this, is your sales and like your results kind of snowball too, to the point where like my first month I had like $3,000 in sales. This month I'm going to have like $16,000 or $17,000 in sales, and I think next month I'll probably have like $30,000 in sales. I think that's reasonable. What do you think?
Oh, I mean, yeah, definitely. As long as you're doing like doing the right things. It comes back to it, doing the right things every day and calling into eBay and getting your limits increased, and you're doubling. I don't see why. There's only a few more months left in the year that really are worse than are going to be like now. I think like August is typically kind of slow, but you should see improvement throughout the entire year. So,
especially when you're a new seller and you're going in that like exponential growth stage of dropshipping.
Yeah,
it just seems like I guess it's a really, I guess how can I say this, like it's like fulfilling to see that your work really pays off fairly quickly. I mean, of course, in the beginning, it can be a little slow. The first, like 3 weeks or so, I think, can be pretty slow because you're still like developing your feedback and you're starting to sell items. Like you're starting to become like a top seller of items. So you're not, when you first start out, you don't have any items like that. So the first few weeks can be kind of slow, but it's kind of nice to have that instant gratification of like your hard work pays off and you can kind of see it. So I think that's one thing that is, for me at least, like a really nice thing about dropshipping is that like if you work hard, you for the most part see results within like a month or two period. I mean, like you put in hard work, and for me actually, like this month it's been like if I list a bunch of items, I see growth, or I'll see like my all-time highest day like the next day or 2 days later, which is pretty crazy. And it's really motivating to have that, to just be able to see your success happen that quickly after hard work. So
yeah, I mean, I know you did a little bit before, like leading up to this. Like you said, you had small limits, and you're going to bigger limits. I mean, for my first, and you can probably relate to this, for my first 2 or 3 months of dropshipping, I was making way below minimum wage for the hours I put into it. Oh, yeah. But it's all about now the fact that I make money while I sleep. Like it's amazing. But a lot of people can't wrap their mind around return on investment, or return on their time. So it's just important that you've stuck with it and you keep seeing that growth, you keep sticking with it. But yeah.
And I guess kind of to go back to the idea of like having an amount of like a startup amount of money and like paying for coaching and stuff like that. I just want to like make it clear that I don't think that's necessary. Like I think it's definitely possible to start this with almost zero money, like almost $0. But I think that's one of the beauties of this is like if you really want it, you can start at the bottom with pretty much zero resources and do this. So I don't want to discourage people that maybe don't have the amount of money to like get started or to buy software or to get coaching. I think it's still possible. If you really work hard, you can do it. I just think it's going to be a little bit slower. You're going to have to be a little bit like more, I guess, like steadfast. Like you're going to go through much more frustrating months to start out with, but it's definitely possible to start that way. In my opinion, I'd say like it's really worth the money if you have a little bit of savings or something that you can start it out with. I would definitely do it that way. But yeah, it's theoretically like if you come up with some new theory of dropshipping or something, you don't really need any money to do it well if you're the first person to like come up with some new idea or something. And that's kind of beautiful, I think.
Yeah, no, definitely. I don't think the thing about dropshipping from the current sources that we're using, I'm not sure how much more creative you really can be. It's more about just execution. Like, so when I say that, it's like who can hire the best employees and pay them, the right amount to where you're still growing your profit and able to afford them, train them, whatever. What softwares are you using? I think always searching for like the next best thing with like the software and always hiring, better employees, things like that. That's where you can be creative, and that's where you really separate yourself from the competition. Because the whole theory of like drop shipping is so, I mean, it's already kind of figured out. Like we know exactly how to make money.
I'm going to argue a little bit with you though, and I think, well, you've been in this for a lot longer, so I don't want to say that you're wrong, but I do also think that like, when people say an industry is like completely solved or like completely figured out, I think that's a little bit kind of like cutting yourself, or like, I guess it's like, you should still look to think like there is definitely possible to come up with some idea that maybe not be like completely revolutionary or groundbreaking, but at least somewhat something that maybe no one's ever thought about before. And I don't want to completely say like that's not possible, but I mean, you may be right in the fact that like most ideas have already been taken to the table. Like people are already using most ideas that have come out. But I think I mean, like one of the beauties of coming up with something new is that people like me and you haven't thought about it yet. So
yeah. I think data, like using data to figure out, really like what
sells, or
like what method is the best, and having proven data to show that to people, or just keep it to yourself and make as much money as you can.
No, I mean, I've definitely dabbled a little bit in that, just taking some of the things that are like my top sellers and then listing things like them just to see what happens, Yeah. So I think, and so I think probably a lot of people are doing similar things to that, but I think part of getting started in dropshipping is it's good to stick to like a method and not deviate super far from that method, because it's proven to work. And I think getting a good foundation, seeing results, and like proving to yourself that this works is important for your mindset and for being positive about dropshipping. Because like we said earlier, I think a lot of people drop out of dropshipping in the first 30, 60 days. So I think it's good to start out with a method and stick to that method, because it's going to prove to you that it can work, and you're going to be like now. When I first started, when you first started telling me about this, I was super skeptical. Do you remember? Like I was asking you questions, I was Googling it, and stuff came up like dropshipping scam and stuff like that. So I mean, I think most people are probably, even if they're really going like diving straight in, they still have in the corner of their head they're going to be skeptical. They're going to think to themselves like, is this really going to be something that changes my life and is going to be my primary source of income? I mean, even for me at this point, like I'd say I'm like 95% sure that in 6 months I'll be making more money dropshipping than playing poker. But I still have that 5% of being a little bit skeptical, just because it's something new, and it's uncertainty brings fear sometimes. So
yeah, no, I agree. I agree. And right now it's for me, it's kind of interesting because I told you this the other day, like I'm all in on dropshipping, so if dropshipping goes away, or, eBay decides to do something, but and as you know, like what we've talked about, it seems like eBay is kind of adjusting more so for now dropshippers to succeed in their marketplace, rather than all the talk that's been going around that, they want dropshippers to go away. They're putting things into place. I mean, I don't have any confirmation yet exactly, so I'm not going to like mention it, but just we have some inside information that they're going to be making a few changes that are going to help people from dropshipping from Amazon. So that right there made me like super excited, because it kind of takes a huge burden, it lifts a huge burden off my shoulders. And like, what if eBay decides they don't want dropshippers? Now it's more like, okay, I feel safe. I'm going to keep moving forward. For the
foreseeable future, it seems pretty likely that eBay is not going to be doing anything too detrimental to dropshippers. But I think one of the other advantages too of this industry is that, like, if you're good at dropshipping on eBay, you can transition to some other method of e-commerce that I think you would be successful in. So I think dropshipping is here to stay for the next few years at a very minimum. I mean, I think probably for a very long time. But even if something changed in the industry to make dropshipping less lucrative or less like, I guess, a little bit harder to do, if you've been dropshipping for a while and you kind of know like the fundamentals of e-commerce, and you're going to have some data and you're going to know some things that sell, you're going to be very well positioned to transition into something within the same industry, or even you're building up a lot of skills that are valuable. And I don't think you should be too worried about your future. I think for the most part, I think, first of all, I think like if we want to look at things like it from a really macro perspective, like things are moving to the internet in every way. Like there's for every day, like someone who's like 75 years old or older is dying, and some 18-year-old's entering the discretionary income like market. And that 18-year-old's way more likely to be shopping online than the old person who just died. So I think, you know, if you just look at like how the way the market is going to change in the next 20 years, I think it's going to be pretty much like everyone is going to probably prefer to shop for most things online. And, you know, there's still going to be people that like to go to the mall, but I think there's probably going to be fewer malls. I think, like, you know, the industry just changes. And I think the way shipping is becoming like optimized to where Amazon's coming out with their drones, and same-day delivery is going to be something that's possible. And even just the way the returns work now, where it's very easy to buy a shirt that doesn't fit and send it back, and you don't have to pay for shipping or anything. Yeah. And you get the item 2 days after you ordered it. You know, I think things are all shifting towards online. And
definitely.
I think like if we're looking at our future, like what's 10 years from now going to look like for dropshipping, I can't say for sure that like dropshipping. I can probably say pretty clearly that dropshipping is not going to be exactly what it is right now. But I can't say for sure that dropshipping is still going to be like as big as it is right now, or as easy as it is right now. But I can probably say pretty like confidently that e-commerce is going to be bigger than it is now. So.
Oh yeah, for sure, 100%. And just to go along with, you know, the skills that you're talking about, I mean, you studied finance in college, right? Yes. So yeah, I studied finance in college too, but I never actually did, you know, my own bookkeeping, like my own profit and loss statements or anything like that. I did a lot of like financial modeling, stuff like that for companies when I worked in the workplace or projects at school. But it's interesting coming up with your own models and things like that, like on Excel and whatever. And that's actually like really relatable to any business that you can go and, you know, interview and say, hey, I've done all of this stuff and I've run a complete business. I've run a 7-figure business. Like, did I ever think I would run a 7-figure business at 26?
That's pretty impressive if you're going to actually enter the workforce again. I mean, if you show on a resume that you had a 7-figure business that you were in charge of and that you ran, I think people are that's going to get your foot in the door in a lot of industries. So
yeah, exactly. So I don't think this is a waste. Like, even if it does go away and I've made it, you know, as much money as I can out of it and I've drained it, and then I have to go back into the workforce, I think I'll be starting off at a higher position than what I left off, just because I have, you know, this not even like management experience, but just like running a complete business experience. So
yeah.
It's wild.
Yeah, it's valuable, and I think it can help you get your foot in the door in a lot of places and have, I think, like impressive skills. I mean, I think that's if we're talking about the workforce, like one of the most important things when you're applying for a job is that you have tangible valuable skills. And I think being good in Excel or spreadsheets is a really valuable skill, and I think in this industry, it's very valuable as well. I mean, there's probably a lot of people that are watching this video that maybe aren't super proficient at Excel, and I would recommend like going and downloading some kind of like an Excel tutorial or something to help you learn some of like the functions that you can put into Excel, because that's really important for record keeping. And I know some software automates some of the record keeping for you a little bit, and that helps. But in terms of like really knowing how much money you're making every month, it's good to keep really detailed records. So if there's one thing, if you're new to dropshipping, or even if you've been in it for a while and you're not doing a lot of your own Excel or Google Sheets, I would recommend that if you have any like free time, or if you get stuck against limits and you don't have a lot to do, go and do some kind of an Excel tutorial, because I think that is very valuable.
That's a good point, because anytime anyone asks me, what do I do now that I'm up against my limits? Like, you know, at the beginning, that's a huge problem. You're going to be able to list so quickly. That's going to happen. Like, yeah, work on self-improvement stuff that you know will help you later on down the road. Really get operations as tight and efficient as possible, so that when you're ready to list more items, everything's already there, you know?
Like when I remember like moaning to you on, and like talking earlier when I had like low limits on eBay, and I was like, man, this sucks. Like, why do I have to start at 10 items? Like some people started at 1,000. But like looking back at it, like in hindsight, like I'm actually kind of glad that the scaling has been like somewhat, I guess, like there's been speed bumps and the limits that eBay put there, because it's definitely helped me like not get overwhelmed and like have time to set up more. I mean, I not to say that I have it all set up. Like there's still a lot of things I need to do in terms of the foundation of my business. Like I'd like when I come back to the States again, I'm going to get like I think I'm going to hire an accountant and maybe talk to like some legal guidance, just so like I can have some type of, I guess, support behind my business. And those are some things I still need to get set up. And I also think like I might need to get like an LLC set up and things like that. So the next time I'm in the States, like that's going to be like one of the main priorities of my next visit. But at the same time, like I've done a lot of things to have my business pretty well organized at this point. Like I could tell you a lot of good data about my business that's valuable for me, specifically for forecasting like what's going to happen in the future months, and looking back and seeing like if there's any inefficiencies of where I'm maybe spending too much money or not spending enough money. So like for people that are getting started out, like you're probably going to want to hire a VA like in your first 6 months of working. And you're going to want to look back and see like how much have you paid your VA this month? How valuable is their work? You know, if you can do the same stuff they're doing in 2 hours, but you're paying them to do it in 5 hours, then possibly it's not worth it. Maybe it is. So those are little things that you should probably be, especially like when you're at the point Tyler's at now, where your business is really big and you're making good money. You're focusing a lot now on efficiency, I would guess, right?
Yeah, that's pretty much it. Just making sure everything's as efficient as possible. I mean, my daily operations include buying gift cards and thinking about my business. Like that's pretty much it.
It's a CEO, pretty much. Like you're
just managing like the
thinking
financial
about like
aspect
what's the future.
Yeah.
But I think when you're scaling, like it's hard to. I think when you're scaling, some inefficiencies are gonna have to develop because things are going so fast. And I think at the scaling stage, like I guess in my opinion, and maybe Tyler, maybe you think differently, but in my opinion, like the most important thing is just getting a ton of items listed. And the other things are also important, but I think like your main goal is just to like get your business big fast, as long as you can keep up with the growth. And in that process, you're not taking as much time to like take a step back and looking at the whole business from afar. And I think once you have good income coming in and you're happy with the amount of money you're making, you're not worried as much about like the month to month or like being profitable. Mm-hmm. That's when you can start like really becoming super efficient.
Yeah.
But that's more of a I guess less of a statement and more of a question to you is maybe when you get to your point that those become the bigger priorities.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, for sure. At the beginning, it really is just keep like scale as quickly as you can, and then it's about okay, how can I. And also, this is something when I say I think about my business, I think about, all right, what expenses? It's cost efficiency. I mean, any business has to go through cost efficiency evaluation. So for me, I've actually had months where I've tried reducing my cost. And in the end, I mean, it really just reduced my sales too, because I had less staff, I had less listings going up. I was trying to like delete listings to help with insertion fees, things like that. So I've experimented all with like what cost can I cut and which ones, are just there and they're going to be there and they're going to keep scaling as I scale my business. One thing I can say that I recently just did is I moved from manually processing orders with a VA to now I have the automatic, for the Walmart side of the business. Now I have the automatic software that does that for me. So that was actually more cost efficient because I'm only paying 10 cents per order and the order's happening like right away. And tracking's getting uploaded automatically too. So I'm not having to pay for somebody to spend the time to do that, and there's no human error also.
Yeah, exactly. So I was gonna say that. Like,
that was an efficiency thing that I should have probably done before, but I was just, I don't know. It was
things go pretty crazy. I mean, especially if, like, I know for the way you started your drop shipping, you were in a lot, like, you use a bunch of different sources. Like, you weren't just specializing on one source. So that's a lot more work. I mean, when you have to think about, like, Home Depot, Amazon, Lowe's, Walmart, all those different sources at the same time, they all have different processes. If you teach a VA to do something in a different source, you have to teach them how to do it in one source, and then do the same thing in a different source, and that takes time.
Exactly.
And there's going to be, and anytime you teach someone to learn something new, they're going to struggle at the beginning and make mistakes when they're first starting out. So I think I have a question though. Would you recommend for someone starting out to specialize in just one source to start out, or do you think it's better to have an array of sources?
No, I definitely think that. So, okay, this is one thing that people are going to do and learn on their own, regardless of what I say, because I mean, I did this even though people were telling me, stick to one source or whatever. I think it's better to have one source or one or two sources, and really become an expert at using those sources, and your VAs become an expert at using those sources. Because if you really think about it, I mean, Amazon carries 95% of things on the internet. Yeah. Like, it's insane. So outside of that, I mean, there's Walmart branded stuff, Target branded stuff, whatever. So, I mean, for me,
it depends on your method too, because Amazon's probably the most competitive.
Amazon is the most competitive for sure. For
the same reason that you said. But one thing I've learned, and I've helped a few people that have tried to start since I've started, is that people have a hard enough time with just one source. So trying to add more sources trying to add more problems or more, more thoughts to the equation is only going to be difficult. And like I said earlier, like, for anyone starting out, like, the first month is so important. Like, it's going to be whether you come out of dropshipping with a positive attitude and you want to, like, be motivated to go forward, or you're going to say, like, this is too hard, this isn't as easy as I thought it was going to be, there's too many problems. And then you leave demotivated and you do something else. And like I said, like, I think that, like, a lot of people are capable of doing this. I don't think that the intelligence level necessarily has to be super high. Like, if you can stick to the methods and you work really hard and you're able to sort out problems and get help when you can't, I think almost anyone can do this. But I think the odds of, like, people sticking on when they start having the problems start piling up becomes lower and lower. Like, you're way more likely to just be like, this isn't worth my time, or this is just too difficult. Yeah. So,
and if you don't solve those things early on too, and, like, get help with them, as your business scales, your problems are gonna scale also.
Yeah. If you have, like, one problem, if you have one problem and you have 100 items, and then you have that same problem with 1,000 items, that problem's 10 times bigger. So
it is so true. And one thing I want to say, like, just before we get completely away from the source thing, I think a lot of people, the reason they try so many different sources is because they get impatient. And it's like, I'm supposed to be making thousands of dollars a month, and I'm not yet. But maybe if I add these sources and these new products, maybe that will completely change my business. And, like, that's just not how it is. I mean, I think listing 1,000 items from Walmart is probably, in the long run, if you list, like, the same dollar amount of products from Walmart and you list 1,000 products from Target, they're probably going to end up with the same amount of sales, to be honest.
Yeah, it's going to be pretty similar. I think, there's going to be variance. I think some people might get lucky or just unlucky with one or the other, but I think in the long run, if you take 100 sellers and they all list, and 50 of them do one thing and 50 of them do the other thing, I think it's going to come out pretty much the same.
Yeah. So it's more about the number of items, and
and I think you make a good point about patience. I mean, we talked about it earlier, but I mean, you have to just trust the process to some extent. Like, it's one of the other reasons why I say it's so important to have a coach or a mentor if you can, because that person's going to tell you, hey man, just keep doing it this way and it's going to work. So when you're just on your own and you have, like, a slow sales day, then you might be compelled to, like, take off 50 items and put 50 different items on or something. Mm-hmm. Whereas, and like, that's just human nature to want to fix something that you perceive as a problem. Whereas if you had a mentor, that person might explain to you, this isn't a problem. It's just it's just you had an unlucky day. Don't worry too much about it. Keep doing what you're doing. Here's the evidence. I can show you my sales. Here's my second month. So even though you're having a slow first month, look, I had a slow first month too. And instead of that person getting like antsy and doing something stupid, they're going to stick to the method. And like I said earlier, like I think at the beginning, having a solid method is going to be really important for your confidence and for getting to that third month or getting to that fourth month where you start like really believing that this is something that can be useful for you. Yeah,
that's about when I knew it was like, I mean, I had faith obviously, but then I saw real results in like month 4, 5, 6, like things just went exponential. So yeah, it was definitely just about, putting in that time. But yeah, did we mention where you are in the world right now?
Oh yeah, so right now I'm living in Medellin, Colombia. So if you ever seen the show Narcos, it's where Pablo Escobar is from. So this was the most dangerous city in the world like 20 years ago, in the 90s. But now it's phenomenal. Like it's so cheap to live here.
That's awesome.
It's just a big city. So
what's interesting is I don't know if you've ever seen the YouTuber Becky. She was in Nicaragua when I was there. She's from the UK, but she actually just moved there, and she's big on dropshipping.
I'll probably I'll look for her name because there's like a lot of expat groups of like all the people that are from other countries that are living in Medellin.
Yeah,
and this is actually a pretty popular destination for like the digital nomad community because you can live it's like living in like a big city. Like it'd be like living in like Chicago or something, but the prices are like ridiculously cheap. Like I just went grocery shopping and I got like 4 ribeyes and it was like $12 or something. For
yeah,
4
that's
ribeyes.
Amazing.
So it's like it's just like absurd.
Yeah.
Like drop shipping is e-commerce arbitrage, and living in Medellin is like lifestyle arbitrage because you're getting like all the same things you could get, or for the most part, there's definitely some disadvantages too, but for the most part, you're getting all of like the benefits of living in a big city for like a quarter of the price. So
yeah, that's awesome. That's definitely I experienced a little bit of that in Nicaragua. I'm sure it's the same but safer.
Nicaragua is also very, very cheap.
Yeah. All right. Well, did you have anything else you wanted to discuss?
No, I think we covered a lot in this.
We did.
In this talk. So.
I feel like hopefully there's going to be lots of questions, and you can follow up.
If people have questions, ask questions, and I'll comment. And I guess they say like in the section below. Yeah. So. Anyone
becoming a YouTuber.
Yeah. If anyone has any questions, I'll try to be involved in the discussion and the comments. And do you post these videos on any forums or anything too?
I'll post it in Honest Dropshippers. Honestly, I feel like there's a lot of information in here. If people listen to the whole thing, they're going to get a lot out of it. So
yeah, I wonder how many people are going to make it this far. But if you've made it this far, I hope you got something out of it because. I hope I didn't come off like I know everything because I sometimes have that tendency to do that. And if I still want to say I'm very new to this and I definitely don't have all the answers and I'm still starting out. So if, Tyler knows way more than I do. I learned almost everything I've learned from Tyler. So he's the expert. But if you're new, I think maybe Tyler's a year out of being in the shoes I'm in. So maybe I'm a little bit more, up to your level. So. If you're new, maybe hopefully I provided some information that could help you.
Yeah, and definitely if you want to see more videos like this, just make sure you subscribe. And like Anthony said, we're gonna answer any questions you guys have in the comments. So yeah, thanks for watching, and Anthony, thanks for doing this call with me, man. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right, guys. See y'all later.